Hello everyone! Why am I sat on the sofa? Well, so far on YouTube, my videos have been quite informative, instructional, hopefully helpful. Talk about things like what to do if you're skinny fat, how to bulk. I've done a bunch of shorts which are exercise tutorials in a playlist. But today we're going to be talking about yours truly. The sun's coming through. It's going to be quite a candid video. And this year marks a decade for training for me. So I'm going to go through the past 10 years, talk about how I got into training, my competitive bodybuilding, what I'm going to do next. But really this is my 10-year transformation. So I'm going to put all the pictures up during the past 10 years of progress of me in bodybuilding. So like I say, I started training 10 years ago in 2012. I was 17 years old when I started training, and it was really just because I didn't want to be skinny anymore. It wasn't necessarily that I wanted to get into bodybuilding. I just wanted to be a bit more muscular. I wanted to put on weight because I didn't want to be skinny, but I didn't want to be fat either. So I started training. The first picture I'm going to put up is actually when I was 15 years old. So this is the first time I thought about my body, what it was and how I was looked at, I suppose. It was the first time that I felt skinny. So I'd never really thought about it before until my mum started commenting on it. And bless her, I love my mum. It was the first time that I was probably forced to think about my health, which is where she was coming from, but ultimately forced me to think about my body and my body image. So my mum thought I was under eating, maybe had an eating disorder. That wasn't the case at all. I was just a skinny, ectomorphic type naturally. As a teenager, I could eat a lot of food, not put on weight. So maybe fairly understandably, she was concerned, which is fine. But it was the first time that I was forced to think, oh, maybe, yeah, I am underweight. Anyway, kept on living like a teenager, playing Call of Duty, making Call of Duty videos actually. So if any of you have subscribed to me and used to play Call of Duty and watch the YouTube videos, the sniper videos back in the day, I was on here making videos back then. My name was Platypus94. Anyway, 15 years old, so I was aware of it, but wasn't really worried about it. This time a few other people started calling me skinny. I had a girlfriend, she was calling me skinny at the time. Sort of as a bit of a joke, but you still remember every time someone kind of says that. And I never took it as an insult. It was never like that. I was never bullied for being skinny, so I don't want to sit here and think like, oh, poor me. So when I was 17, I got my first job. What I did was I bought an adjustable dumbbell set, and that was the first thing I had. Here's a picture of me at 17, the first ever progress picture I took. This is after my first ever workout. I wish it was a bit more full body so you could see everything. It'd be great to see. This is why I tell my clients, I tell people to take progress pictures, because I have physical evidence of my first ever training session and when I started. That is my exact starting point for lifting weights. So I started training very enthusiastically actually. It was really fun. I found it enjoyable straight away, but I realized I wasn't growing as quickly as some of my friends who were lifting weights at this time. And probably luckily, I very quickly realized that I'd have to put a little bit more effort in than those who didn't have my genetics. Because you might look at some of the pictures of me now when I was competing and look at me and go, well, what's wrong with your genetics? You can put on muscle. Yeah, but it took a long time, a lot of work, and I realised really quickly that I had to eat a lot of food to actually put on weight on the scale, no matter how strong I was getting with the training. And that's why I preach to skinny guys now. You have to bulk. You have to put that food time in if you actually want to grow. So I did the first couple of months or so of training without focusing on diet at all, and here's a picture of what I looked after a couple of months. So again, still really skinny, but I was training near enough every day. Hold my hands up and say it wasn't optimal training at all, but I was doing something. And a lot of my friends are doing a similar thing and actually growing from it. I wasn't seeing anything. I was actually one of the stronger guys in my year at school, but I just wasn't putting on the actual muscle size. And then when I started eating a lot, and I committed to it. It was 5-6 meals every single day. The mistake I made here was I wasn't actually tracking anything. I was just seeing food and eating it, and keeping in my head that I needed to eat a lot of protein. But ultimately I still didn't know very much at this point. I didn't have a personal trainer, I didn't have a coach, but I was reading every single day on the internet. I was watching YouTube videos. I bought some textbooks and I was looking into it. So here's a picture of me at my 18th birthday party. So I've been training just under a year here, and still you can see very skinny, but I've probably been taking it seriously for about 6 months at this point. That just goes to show like how much of a slog this was for me to put on muscle. But 18 years old, I wasn't perfect. I was going out drinking here and there as you do as an 18-year-old, but I remember taking protein shakes to the club in a rucksack. So I was still committed to my craft. Anyway, still training at home, still putting on size, but at this time I remember I had a full Olympic bench press set with 100 kilos worth of weight, squat rack. And a turning point for me from being someone who trained with weights to considering myself a bodybuilder was when I got really sick. I got food poisoning from eating some out-of-date chicken. I was probably sick for about 10 days, and I lost a bunch of weight at this time because I couldn't keep down anything. I couldn't even keep down my protein shakes. I remember I was just sipping BCAAs all day, and that's all I could do. Sometimes I was even throwing up that. Food poisoning is not nice, but for someone who struggled to put on that weight in the first place, seeing it disappear so fast was gutting for me. Anyway, while I was sick, I watched Pumping Iron for the first time, and I realised, wow, people like do this as a thing. They get on stage. I didn't even realise. Social media wasn't so prevalent at the time, so unless you had a friend on Facebook who happened to do a competition, you probably wouldn't have seen it. Now bodybuilding competitions are in the public eye a lot more. On Instagram and TikTok and Facebook all the time. But this is back in early 2014 when I decided I want to be a bodybuilder and I want to get on stage and compete. So that's when I joined a proper gym for the first time, and I said next year in 2015 I'm going to do my first bodybuilding show. So this is when I really committed to the bulk, and I got pretty fat, but I built some size. And this is how I looked by the end of that year, 2014. So I started my proper contest prep in January of that year, my first ever diet cutting down as well, and I got on stage in July. So I gave myself 6 months to cut down. Still a massive learning process at the time. I didn't get incredibly shredded. Like I said, I had a lot of fat to lose, but then I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't losing any muscle. I think I did pretty well for my starting point, to be fair, and considering my genetics and everything, I did it naturally, which the topic of we'll get onto later. So I did it with the UK BFF, which was the big bodybuilding federation at the time. They held the pro card, so the only way at the time in the UK you could get a pro card was by winning the British Championships at the UK BFF. I came second in the juniors at a first timer show out of 2, so I was last. But I loved it. It was the first time that I felt a sense of accomplishment for something that I'd done completely by myself. I didn't have a coach, I still never have had a coach. I do everything in my bodybuilding career by myself. And that year was a massive learning curve as well, because that's when I started personal training. I was doing a personal training course all the way through my contest prep, while doing it myself at the same time, losing weight, doing that first cut. I learned a hell of a lot, which I could apply straight away with clients in the gym, which was super valuable. Anyway, so I loved doing my first bodybuilding show. I knew this is what I wanted to do as soon as I stepped on stage. I knew I wanted to compete again. I knew I wanted to do well as a junior, because at the time here I was 20 years old and juniors are 23 and under. So I had that time to put on extra muscle and do really well as a junior. As I mentioned before, I competed naturally, and the UK BFF wasn't a tested federation. I knew that going into it. I knew there would be people using performance enhancing drugs in that show, whether I was competing against them or not. But I wanted to do it naturally because I wanted to know what I was capable of myself, and I still didn't know if I wanted to do this long term or not, so I wasn't going to risk using anything that I wasn't comfortable with at the time. That being said, as soon as I made that decision to be a bodybuilder and continue competing, that's when I started to question, should I be using steroids? Now, there is no should. No one should use steroids. Does it fit my current goals? Does it fit my risk to rewards? I weighed up the risks, I researched side effects. I actually researched a lot of things about steroids and performance enhancing drugs for over a year before I even considered using them, just because I wanted to know and I was curious. And shortly after my first bodybuilding competition, with the mindset that I wanted to compete the following year again, I started my first steroid cycle. Now, I want to be open and honest with you guys. I'm not going to delve into exactly what I've done throughout my bodybuilding career in terms of steroids and performance enhancing drugs. But my first cycle was testosterone only, as it always should be. And at the time, everyone on the forums and the advice that you were getting was 500 milligrams a week. That's what you take, 500 milligrams a week of testosterone for your first cycle. I decided to be cautious and not do that much. Anyway, this video is not about how to run a first cycle. I just want to throw that out there, that this is the point that I decided to start using performance enhancing drugs for my bodybuilding. Anyway, after contest prep, I started to get stuck into an off season and put a lot more muscle on if I could. The idea to compete the following year again in 2016. And early 2016, I tore my pec, so that didn't happen. I couldn't train for a long time because of the injury. I started eating bad. I built up a huge appetite because of the bulking. I was probably eating 6,000 to 7,000 calories a day on that bulk. And to be honest, when I finished training, I probably wasn't far off. It was still 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day, but more or less completely inactive other than personal training, just walking around the gym floor. That was my only activity. So by the end of that year, I got pretty fat. Even when I started training again, you know, I was putting on muscle, but still had a lot of fat to get rid of. So I decided again, early 2017, I'm going to compete again. I'm going to do my second bodybuilding show. So that prep was horrendous. I lost 31 kilos in 17 weeks, which is ridiculous. Never lose that much weight that fast. If you are this fat, if you're as fat as I was at the start of that contest prep, you probably need a good year to get in shape for a bodybuilding show. So yes, I lost a lot of fat, but I also lost a lot of muscle in that process. And again, I wasn't completely shredded either. Anyway, did okay in that show. I was beaten by Jace, who's a big contest prep coach now. Back then, I think that was his second show as well. And I qualified for the British finals, went on holiday, took a week off, and then came back and started prepping for the British finals, which were in October. This was the end of June. I'd already been prepping since the start of the year, lost 31 kilos, and then needed to continue that prep all the way through to October. I didn't make it to the British finals. I got pretty burnt out by the start of September, so I think I was about 5 weeks out before I called it a day, because mentally that was just so draining. So I called it a day there, and I decided I was going to compete again next year. So actually that year in 2017, the UK BFF British Finals, that was the last year that they had the IFBB Pro card to give away. After that, they lost it, and that's when Two Bros came into the picture. So that's who I competed with in 2018. So in 2018, I actually competed at the second ever Two Bros show, which was Ben Wheeler Classic, which was a pro qualifier, and the first time I competed in Classic Physique. I didn't do great. That was an international show. I was well out of my depth the first time. I wasn't competing as a junior. I was still 23 at the time. Put on a lot more size, but I definitely wasn't in proper shape. Still the best shape that I'd been on stage, but I couldn't pose like a Classic Physique competitor. I didn't really know what Classic was at the time. I just knew that I wasn't big enough to be a bodybuilder. So then that year I carried on my contest prep, and then 4 weeks later I competed in the PCA Midlands as a junior. I actually competed here against Brandon Harding. I think that was one of his first shows. Now he's turned professional, which is crazy. So I qualified there for the PCA British Championships and then went through to the British 4 weeks later. At this point, I wasn't really expecting much from myself because it was a huge junior lineup, but it was my last year that I could compete as a junior at the British final. So I wanted to take that opportunity. And I ended up placing 5th, which I was over the moon with. And that top 6, looking back now, was incredible. We had Matty Ince, Joe Cross, Ryan Crowley, me, Ginger Josh. I forget who else was there, really sorry. That was the first time that I probably felt like I had a little bit of potential. So that was October, roll forward a couple of months, and my son was born in December. Now I have to admit, right up until like even the day my son was born, bodybuilding was my priority, and that changed massively when I had Grayson. Since then, my #1 priority has been being a dad. So I knew I wasn't going to compete in 2019. I wanted to focus on being a dad, building up my business, building up my reputation as a personal trainer. So I focused on putting on size, and I did, but it was quite a relaxed year for me in terms of bodybuilding. Unfortunately, 2 big things happened in 2019 that threw a spanner in the works in my training. Firstly, I herniated a disc in my back, L5-S1, which if anyone knows is a big issue. So that put me out of training completely, I mean anything, for 2 months. I could barely walk, I could barely stand. That was awful. I might get into that in a later video. But ultimately, that's what you need to know. I herniated a disc. I've still got this herniated disc in my back. It's still an injury that affects me, not to that degree, obviously. But at the time, I thought, wow, maybe I'm never going to be able to compete again. Maybe I'm never going to be able to train again. And then another thing was, I've been struggling all this year and towards the end of 2018 with some really bad digestive issues. So I'm not going to get too into that and the issues surrounding it. That is another video, and I will do a video addressing my digestive disease. But ultimately, yeah, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune digestive disease called solitary rectal ulcer syndrome, which sounds delightful, SRUS. So what are the most important factors in putting on muscle? Training and eating. And both of those are massively affected towards the end of 2019. I thought, that's it. I'm not going to be able to be a bodybuilder anymore. I'm not going to be able to do what I love. And I really had to try and struggle to come to terms with that. Anyway, start of January 2020, I was able to start training again pretty lightly. But when I say lightly, I mean I was struggling to do bodyweight squats without hurting my back, and I was super anxious that I didn't want to hurt my back, and I wanted to do everything very controlled and very slow, and it's the first time that I didn't want to rush progress at all. Anyway, January through March, very slowly I built back up. Not to where I was, definitely not to where I was strength-wise. Towards the end of 2019, before I hurt myself, I was the strongest I'd ever been. And still, I've never been that strong. But I had to adapt my training. There are certain exercises I couldn't do. I couldn't do deadlifts, couldn't really do bent over rows, I couldn't do heavy squats. But I was making progress, and then lockdown hits, right? All the gyms are closed, great. Luckily, I'm a personal trainer. I was able to borrow some equipment from my gym, have it in my back garden. But in that time of my life, I had a lot of personal stuff going on. I had to move a bunch of times to different places. So there was nowhere that I could be consistent with my training. Plus I had loads of stress from my personal life, loads and loads of stress from a business perspective because I couldn't earn money because the gyms were closed. I only had my online clients, which was a portion of my business at the time. So it was a massive financial hit. I'd just gone from doing pretty well with my business to absolutely nothing. So it's safe to say I made 0 progress in 2020 right up until the gyms opened again. I knew I wasn't going to be good enough to get on stage again and beat what I'd done previously in 2018, but I wanted a challenge to get myself in shape, so I decided to book a photo shoot. Like I said, gyms opened in August. I booked a photo shoot on my birthday, which is the 5th of November, with Matt Marsh, who was an incredible photographer, by the way. That was my goal. I built back muscle, I got in shape, I got pretty lean, to be fair, and actually I did really well looking back at it for the period of time that I had. Anyway, a few days away from the photo shoot, there's an announcement that we're going to go back into another lockdown on the 4th of November. My photo shoot's booked on the 5th. So I'm struggling, I'm calling Matt, can you move it a day early? Yes. Can you get here for like 5 o'clock in the morning? Yes, why not? Oh shit, my tan's booked for the 4th as well, now I need it on the 3rd. Call the tanner, okay, yeah, I can fit you in. It was a struggle, but we got there and we got the photos, and I still love those photo shoot photos. Look, I love bodybuilding, I love classic physique, I love that look. I love the competitive nature of competitive bodybuilding, I love all of it. But I don't actually want to look like that year round. It's more of an art to me. I'd love to look like I did in that photo shoot year round. That is my perfect ideal physique. A little bit softer, a little bit smaller, lean but not shredded. Lovely. Anyway, roll it forward, we're going through a lockdown. Luckily, I was actually able to train at a gym at the time. I knew the owner of a gym who wanted to get in shape and do a photo shoot himself, so I said, I'll prep you for the photo shoot if you let me come and train with you. Hey, it might not be right, but come on, Boris was throwing bloody parties, so I was able to train this time. But guess what happened? I tore my fucking pec again. You couldn't make it up during lockdown. Anyway, I think this was the start of March and gyms were set to open up again in April. Luckily, I recovered really quick from that. It wasn't a bad tear at all, but it meant that March and the start of April, I couldn't train. Anyway, gyms opened that day in April. I remember messaging all of my clients being like, you're not gonna be as strong as you were, leave your ego at the door, start back light, here's your new program. And I went in like, yeah, I wanna compete, I'm gonna build some muscle. First session is legs, stiff leg deadlifts, used to stiff leg 5 plates a side. let's try 3. Second rep, bang, pop my hamstring. Tore my hamstring in front of my girlfriend as well. And that was like one of the only times I've been in the gym with my girlfriend. So now I'm there with a slightly torn pec, torn my hamstring, I've still got my digestive disease, I've still got problems from my herniated disc, and I'm like, I want to compete this year, and I'm going to make it happen. Luckily, again, that hamstring tear wasn't awful. I was back to training at the start of May, and I decided to start a contest prep at the end of May, aiming for that PCA Midlands that I did back in 2018, this time as a novice bodybuilder. Anyway, started prepping. Prep went really good, really good. To the point where I could probably jump in an earlier show. I'm going to be ready early. So I decided to jump in a show 2 weeks before the planned show, PCA Midlands, which was a 2-bro show. Decided to compete in classic physique, and I did really well. Placed 2nd out of 8 in an open classic physique class, and I really looked classic this time. Not like I did back in 2018. I embodied classic physique. I took time to learn the posing, and I was absolutely shredded at that show. So I placed 2nd there. It was a bit of an iffy decision. The guy who beat me was more of a bodybuilder. He actually competed in one of the bodybuilding classes in the show as well. But hey, that's what the judges wanted on the day. I placed 2nd and got my qualification for the Arnold Classic UK, which is the first Arnold Classic back in 2021. But I didn't really think I wanted to do that. I wanted to do the PCA Midlands, and I wanted to do the PCA British. 2 weeks later, competing in the Midlands, novice bodybuilding this time, and I placed 2nd out of 8 again. This time it was a 1-point decision, meaning there was just 1 point between 1st place and 2nd place, so I was very close to winning that show. And they announced that on stage. Watch this clip.
Splitting the top 2, there is 1 single point.
No.
Couple of nervous looking faces on stage here.
Come on, Ellis!
In 2nd place, we have number 38, Ellis. And Giovanna, number 32, Nathan.
Audience members, could we have a round of applause for all novice bodybuilders? A fantastic start. A final bonus from your top 3 competitors. Any shot of your choice.
Anyway, a little bit deflated there. 2 2nd place finishes back to back, which could have been 1st place finishes. But anyway, 4 weeks to the British Championships. Then I decided, you know what? I could probably go for this Arnold Classic. I'm in shape, why not? I've been invited, why not? So I went to the NEC, competed in the Arnold in Classic Physique, which is the biggest show that I've done, the biggest lineup that I competed against, and I placed 5th in Open, which I was over the moon with. 5th in Arnold Classic, at a pro qualifying event. I can't remember how many people were in my class, but it was a lot. That's when I started to get people telling me I could turn professional. I had judges' feedback. I had Steve Weinberger telling me that I had potential to turn professional, who's one of the head judges at Mr. Olympia. I messaged Jordan Peters, JP. He told me I had massive potential, which was really reassuring because someone I look up to massively in the industry, always have. So I was on cloud 9 there, and actually that is probably the best physique I've ever brought to the stage. That first show I did that season, the Graphism, was the leanest. Midlands was a really good look as well, but for classic physique, the Arnold, perfect. I think I really did well there. But at this point, after 3 shows, 3 peaks, I'd been shredded from about 2 weeks out of the Graphism. So I was really lean and holding it for a long time. And I was super burnt out. And I didn't know if I could do the British. And I was telling my fiance, like from like 2 weeks out, like, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I could do this for another 2 weeks. And she was the one telling me, yes, you can. What are you doing? Go and do your cardio. And thank you so much, Danielle, for that, because it would have been so easy for her at that point to go, no, come on, let's go out for a meal. We've been waiting to go out for a meal for whatever, like, you know, let's go for a weekend away, because we can't do that when you're on contest prep. So for her to turn around and support my goals, even when I'm not, is incredible. And I love her to bits, and I'm so lucky. And that's not the only reason I'm lucky, but she does massively support my bodybuilding, which is incredible. Anyway, I did the British, but this time I actually did the British as a classic competitor and not novice bodybuilding, which is a bit of a mistake because the criteria between 2 bros and British is very different for classic physique. I ended up placing in the top 6 of the British, which was good, got a first call out. But ultimately, if I had stuck to that novice category, I think I would have done a lot better. I probably would have placed 1st or 2nd by the looks of the lineup, considering that I'd actually beaten people in the top 3 at my qualifier. But it is what it is. So that takes us up to October 2021, and I'm deciding, do I want to compete again? Maybe yes, maybe no. Anyway, I'm still training and eating like a bodybuilder up until around February of this year, 2022, when I decided I need a little bit of a break from this lifestyle, and I need to introduce a bit more balance back into my life. So of course I carried on training. I'm a personal trainer and online coach. I'm always going to be training. I love it. It's part of my life. It always will be. But without the pressure of improving for bodybuilding, and I think that's massive. I was training because I was enjoying to train again, and not because I needed to improve every single session, which is what bodybuilding became for me. And eating, I wasn't eating to grow, I was eating to maintain, which made food much more enjoyable as well. Also meant I could be a bit more relaxed in my social life, go out to eat, go out to drink, be a bit more present for my family, be a bit more present for my son Grayson. And all this time still kind of undecided as to whether I was going to compete again or not, but I was just happy to maintain a good physique. And actually, I've enjoyed the physique that I've been able to maintain this year. Actually a lot healthier. I've actually just been running a low dose of testosterone most of this year, 240 milligrams a week. I know that's like a high TRT, but that's like a low for a bodybuilder. But for me, that puts me just at the top of the reference range, actually a little bit over. But ultimately, that's a pretty low dose for a bodybuilder, 240 milligrams a week. So that takes us up to now. And what am I going to do next? Well, first things first, I'm getting married in March. The goal is to look good for the wedding, good for the honeymoon, nothing too over the top. Recently I've been getting this little itch again. I mentioned earlier I competed against Brandon Harding, who turned pro this year in Classic Physique, looked phenomenal, and the progress he's made since we competed together is incredible. And that got me really emotional watching his video of him turning pro, going through that journey, seeing him realise a dream that I had once, that maybe I still have. And the other thing is, at the Arnold Classic this year, one of the guys I competed with at the Graftism and the Arnold the year before, although he wasn't in my height category, he was doing Classic Physique, Yemi, won the overall and his pro card, which got me thinking, wow, okay, all right. Maybe, just maybe, I could do that. So, we'll see. Maybe next year. I tell you what, get me to 1,000 subscribers and I'll compete next year and I'll turn pro for you. How's that? But, you know, that would be very much appreciated. Anyway, it's been quite nice doing this more candid video, more personal. So that's my 10-year bodybuilding transformation. It's been incredible. I don't know where I would be without training and nutrition and bodybuilding. It's been a massive part of my life for a decade now. It's not just a hobby. It's not even just a lifestyle. It's actually a part of me. And I get emotional thinking about it because it's taken me out of dark places, given me a sense of purpose. It's given me a career. I'm a personal trainer and online coach. I help people get in shape, and that gives me a massive sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. I love my job. I never get out of bed thinking, oh, I've got to go to work, I've got to do work today. I love it, I relish it. And I'm so grateful that I'm a person that gets to say that, because not a lot of people do. And it's all because I decided to buy a set of adjustable dumbbells when I was 17 years old. I love bodybuilding like it's a member of my family. That's how strongly I feel about it. And that might sound crazy, that might sound stupid and cheesy, but you know what? When something's been in your life every single day for 10 years, and it's been such a central factor, that's how you'll feel as well. Hit the like button, subscribe, actually comment your own transformations. I want to hear your own transformation stories. I might do a video on transformation stories one day, so please post your comments down below if you want to be featured in that. Follow me on Instagram at @_musclearchitect for daily updates. And if you want to be coached by me, go to www.themusclearchitect.com. I'll see you in the next video.